Hey everyone, welcome back to Gender Justice with Silver Linings. I'm Mariah Silver, and I'd like to welcome you to St. Lucia in the Caribbean. St. Lucia is in the West Indies. It is a gorgeous island. It passed actually between the British and the French 14 times. So if you actually ask a local, sometimes they'll tell you that they're 7 times British and 7 times French. And they won their independence in 1978. And they actually recently celebrated their Independence Day, which is great. Like I said, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous island. It has a rainforest, it has sulfur springs, and it's actually known for what are called the pitons, which are 2 peaks at the opposite end of the island that used to be a volcano that imploded. But we're staring out right now actually at the Caribbean Sea. And I'm going to shift gears because this is not a travel channel, as you all know. So we're going to shift gears from this beautiful background to talk about something that is extremely tragic that actually happened in Parkland, Florida. As we all have been following in the news, there was a shooting at a high school there where 17 individuals were gunned down and killed. Sending really the media, the politics, government, everything into a flurry, if you will, about gun control. These are the conversations that we always have after an incident like this, a mass shooting, particularly in high schools, calling for stronger gun control and increasing the debate about gun control issues. But what I want to talk about today is issues of violence against women as a national security issue. Now, you may be thinking, why on earth am I talking about violence against women and a national security issue? The reason that I'm bringing it up as a national security issue is because I think it's an important way to frame these debates. When we talk about mass shootings, almost always, if we look at the background of the shooter, it's a man who has committed prior acts of violence against women. And I could list for days incidents where we've seen this happen. Most recently, Pulse nightclub. We saw the Las Vegas shooter at Fort Hood, the shooter at Fort Hood. So these men, as we sort of explored in the media, it's come to light that they've committed acts of domestic violence or stalking or some form of violence against women or the partners in their lives. And this really has been a thread that we've seen through almost all mass shootings and a discussion that many of us start having, and which we've also been having around the Parkland shooter and why. It's been revealed through media sources that the Parkland shooter either stalked or abused his ex-girlfriend, bringing up this debate again of domestic violence and correlations to mass shootings. So the question then really is, if these shooters have a propensity for committing acts of violence against women, which is then correlating to these large mass shootings, then we're starting to see the issue here where our schools, our airports, our military installations aren't safe because individuals who've committed acts of violence against women have access to guns in particular, but also other forms of weaponry. So this really does extend itself beyond individual cases of domestic violence. While we always want to highlight that one is too many, when we look at it from this vantage point, when we have one individual that we can identify has a background of issues of violence against women, we know that there is, again, this increased propensity to commit mass acts of violence, which is why when we're talking with legislators, the media, and we're talking about these issues, it can be helpful to frame this as a national security issue. A lot of lawmakers, a lot of policymakers, when they hear national security issue, a light bulb goes off. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to reach them just by showing them the victims themselves and showing them this correlation between domestic violence and mass shootings. But framing this as a national security issue, and that this really goes to the heart of the safety and security of our nation, and that these mass acts of violence can be tied to individuals who perpetrate crimes against women, is something really important. And I think that it helps us frame the issue of what do we do about it. An example of what we do about it is actually what Oregon has done recently. Oregon recently passed legislation that states if you have a prior domestic violence conviction, you cannot own a gun. So what's important about that is they're recognizing the correlation between increased harm and risk to individuals and the community more broadly when you take a gun and you put it in the hands of someone who's perpetrated crimes of violence against women. So again, framing those issues as national security issues, as really going to the core of what's going to make our nation safe, I think can help bring us to a better discussion of what we need to do about it. And it brings us to the point of urgency. This needs to stop happening now. We don't need these shootings at elementary schools, high schools, airports, military installations. These shootings, we know one factor that can help to some degree predict what this perpetrator may look like, what their profile might be. And one of those things we've consistently been seeing is that these individuals have committed acts of violence against women. And we need to come up with some mechanism, and a mechanism soon, that really helps us grasp how do we either red flag or work with individuals who've committed acts of abuse and violence against women to ensure that we stop it and that it's not going to extend to violence at a mass level with mass casualties. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to end with a silver lining because this is a really tough discussion. The media right now is really inundated with these issues, and I think it's really, really difficult to watch and to see this happening again. We've seen Pulse nightclub victims and victims from the Newtown school shooting coming forward and talking about this tragedy and how it links to all these other tragedies in our country. So my silver lining is student activists. We've seen student activists take this issue and say, not anymore. And they are really forcing the issue. They are not stopping. They are bringing it right to legislators' doors. They are bringing it right to the media, and they are not standing down, which I think is really, really important. We've seen this student activism work in the past. For example, with Title IX guidance on campus sexual assault, students were instrumental in pushing the government towards improvements on campus sexual assault. And I think the students at Parkland who have been working on this issue are going to make some progress, and we've got to hold on to that hope that they'll be able to do it. So thank you for joining me today in the beautiful Caribbean. I hope you liked the backdrop, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.